What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Tuesday morning. And once again, every evening at 10 p.m. seemingly, until this Cristiano Ronaldo interview drops, more comments are revealed, of course. As I mentioned previously, the full Cristiano Ronaldo interview is set to drop on Wednesday. Part 1 on Wednesday, Part 2 on Thursday. Of course, it's this bombshell, explosive, exclusive interview that he's done with Piers Morgan. Sunday's comments saw him talking about Erik ten Hag, talking about the lack of investment at Manchester United, having no respect for the Manchester United manager. Certainly a lot of fallout about that. But last night, the comments that came out last night were arguably, possibly the most explosive comments, to be honest with you. I mean, he spoke about that he felt that he was betrayed by the club in those initial comments that were released on Sunday evening. But last night, he went right to the top. He spoke about the ownership at Manchester United. It was something that Piers Morgan himself had teased on social media during the day that we would find out later on in the evening. We absolutely did find out. He spoke about the Glazers, the Glazer ownership, and how essentially they don't care about Manchester United. They don't care about the club. They only care about money, which, absolutely, indeed, that is correct. So we're going to get into all of that. Smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Remember, you can join the UV Members Club. Links in the video description. It wasn't the only thing that was released last night in regards to this Ronaldo interview. There were comments about former teammates of his. He spoke about Gary Neville, Roy Keane, Rio Ferdinand, etc. He also spoke about Manchester United not believing him, about his an illness in his family with his young daughter, which is why he didn't go on pre-season training. We'll talk about that. There's also been speculation and possible talks with Bayern Munich that have happened in the last couple of days or so. That's been disputed. There's been talk about contract termination, what Manchester United are going to do next. Of course, they've sought legal advice before they officially react and officially take the next step of what they want to do with the fallout of this interview. There was an awkward exchange, possibly with Bruno Fernandes, although people are saying that people are looking too much into that. So there really is a lot to get into this morning. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. But let's get into the latest Ronaldo quotes, starting with him absolutely slamming the ownership at Manchester United. I think this is music to the ears, frankly, of a lot of Manchester United, well, all Manchester United fans. When asked about the Glazers and the ownership at Manchester United, Cristiano Ronaldo said to Piers Morgan, quote, "The Glazers don't care about the club. Manchester United is a marketing club to them. The sport, they don't care, or they don't really care, in my opinion." He also confirmed that he's never spoken to the Glazers since he returned. They give full power to the president and sporting director. And obviously, that is, as I mentioned, music to the ears of Manchester United fans. And no Manchester United fan, including yours truly, will say, "Oh, you're terrible for criticising the Glazers," because it's very significant, certainly. I mean, it's the highest. When you have a player that is under contract to Manchester United, and the highest paid player at the club, arguably the most highest profile football player on the planet right now, criticising the Glazers, absolutely, it adds greater scrutiny and spotlight onto what is the ongoing ownership issue at Manchester United. And what it does take, certainly, is brass balls from Cristiano Ronaldo to do that. It just goes to show he is how bent on ensuring that he never plays for Manchester United again, and he gets his exit from the club, no doubt about that. And I have mixed feelings on this, because I look at the comments he made last night about the ownership. And again, I absolutely agree with him. I think that they're right. Clearly, they're right. It doesn't take a genius to see that's how Manchester United are being operated. It doesn't take a genius to see that clearly that is the fact. What he has spoken last night when he's saying that the Glazers don't really care about the club. It's a marketing club to them. They don't care about sport. They care about money. They care about shirt sales. They care about share prices. The irony is that the reason why Cristiano Ronaldo returned to Manchester United and was brought back to Manchester United was because of the way it's run. The club is run as a commercial football club, and that's why Cristiano Ronaldo was brought back from Juventus, because it was a commercial transfer. It wasn't necessarily a football transfer. It wasn't a transfer that was made with the best football intentions in mind. It was made with commercial intentions in mind, i.e., we're going to sell a record amount of shirts, i.e., this is going to spike the stock price. Which it did. It was successful in that extent. It sold a record amount of shirts for Adidas and Manchester United. The stock price went up to record numbers, and the Glazers actually cashed out a large amount of stock because of it. So that's why Cristiano Ronaldo was brought back. As I mentioned before as well, when I see those comments and some of the other comments that he's been saying, whether it's about, the lack of investment at Manchester United, whether it's talking about ex-teammates, whether it's talking about, as I mentioned, the ownership or executives at Manchester United that want him out, if he'd just stuck to that in this interview, then speaking for myself, I can't speak for everyone else, but then I wouldn't have had as much of a problem. I still have issues with when the first sort of teasers dropped the day of a Manchester United game, after a victory, after a last-minute winner, after Alejandro Garnacho gets that last-minute goal and he's got his moment, and now we're talking about Ronaldo, and we're still talking about Ronaldo days removed. I would still have an issue with that. But if he just focused on this in the interview, then you would say, great, shining a light on the dark areas of Manchester United, no problem. But you still can't overlook what was his comments about the Manchester United manager. And I do look at this, and again, I still do have, and I know people don't like this, and they'll be pushing back, and this is still a very polarizing issue, certainly when you talk about Ronaldo, because it's always a polarizing issue. But I just look at this interview still, and we're still waiting for the full interview to come out. So, context is key. I'm sure of that. But it feels like to me that Ronaldo's making sure his bases are covered, as it were. He is going scorched earth. He is ensuring that nobody at the club wants him to remain, essentially. Because the Glazers are such, and this goes back to how poor owners they are and how badly they run Manchester United, then they are a marketing club and they are a commercial club, and they do care about is money and taking money out of the club and making money for themselves. If Cristiano Ronaldo had just done an interview where he criticised the manager, where he criticised the executive structure, even criticising a lack of investment at Manchester United, the Glazers could still possibly, in their mind, go, we could still maybe keep him, They could still say, we could still maybe keep him. We could still, he still makes us money. They get out their graphs and their charts and they go, still a lot of shirt sales. Still a lot of, traction on social media. Instagram followers. They would still look at all those metrics and go, well, we could maybe keep him. But now that Ronaldo's gone, they don't care about the club. They only care about making money, which, by the way, is true. It backs the Glazers up against the wall as well. And they'll support any decision that Erik ten Hag and Manchester United deem fit, which will likely be him going in January, whether it's by just sacking him or a mutual termination or by selling him. Cristiano Ronaldo clearly has played his final game for Manchester United. It doesn't take a genius to see that. He's ensuring it. Absolutely, he's ensuring it. Now, I've seen people say, what does this mean for, the Glazers out movement? What does it mean for the Glazers' future of their tenure at Manchester United? And in reality, I really hope I'm wrong with this, but not all of that much, I guess. Best case scenario, I think, from this is that the Glazers, because of the public scrutiny, are forced to offer up more funds for Manchester United. Whether they'll do that or not, I don't know, because they've never invested money into Manchester United. They've invested their own money into Manchester United. I think it would mean more so, opening up more funds that the club generates as opposed to what they would put into the club. But again, best case scenario, it would be that Manchester United are forced to invest in January, and they'll be forced to invest anyway because we're a striker light now, and we're already light up front anyway, and Ronaldo seemingly will be gone. But do I think that these Ronaldo comments will really, impact the Glazers' intentions to sell or anything like that? In all honesty, and I might be being quite defeatist here, but I'm not sure it does, because that process is what it is at the moment. His comments last night, whilst they are music to the ears of all of us Manchester United fans, these aren't revelationary truths. These are things we all know. And he mentions it in the interview. He said the fans are never wrong. And he's not wrong in that sense. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows the way the Glazers run this football club, and that's poorly. And there still could be, so Jim Ratcliffe's kind of distanced himself enough from purchasing the club. But if reports are to be believed, and these were only a few months ago, the Glazers might be more open to selling now than they ever have been. On top of that, there is this sort of come to Jesus moment on the horizon for Manchester United and the Glazer family, because we're getting to the point now, after years of not investing into the club, the same facilities that Cristiano Ronaldo is talking about, we're getting to the point now where investment has to come. It has to, otherwise the club's just going to fall in complete disrepute. The stadium, the training ground, other aspects of Manchester United, and the Glazers, frankly, don't have that level of cash. That's why they were looking for outside investment. That's why they were looking for minority ownership, because they don't have that money. So basically, the point is coming whereby the Glazers have to either put up or shut up, and they're not going to really be able, I think, to put up. So they're going to have to shut up. So I don't know if what Ronaldo has said is, like I said, any revelationary kind of things he said, but certainly it's refreshing to hear. And again, it's ballsy. Now, the cynic in me, and the cynic I think in some people, would say, well, you knew what you were getting yourself into. Make no mistake. When you were last at the club, the Glazers were in charge. Granted, when you were last at the club, Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge, and he was holding this whole thing together. Whilst you had an ownership that could care less about winning titles, about making money, you still had a manager and an executive structure at Manchester United that did care about winning trophies. You had a manager like in Sir Alex that was a serial winner. You had David Gill as a chief executive that was about buying players that were going to improve the squad and buying the best players around, such as missing out on a title by goal difference or whatever it was, and then having next season sign Robin Van Persie, sign the best striker in the league, win the title. That's what Manchester United were about. That was the game plan, if you will, and buying young players from within the Premier League, such as Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill did, and that has changed dramatically. Between now and then, once he came back, we didn't have the best manager in the world, and it wasn't necessarily about winning trophies. And the executive structure, he was purchased by Ed Woodward, but Ed Woodward could care less about winning things, more so about, as I mentioned, shirt sales and share prices. So that had changed, but he did know what he was getting himself in for. He can't be naive enough to say that. And I know he got a call from Sir Alex to say, come back to Manchester United, don't come to Manchester City. But even Sir Alex must have said what the situation was at Manchester United. And from an outsider looking in, it didn't take you to be within the club to figure out what was going on. If you just looked at Manchester United, what's happened to them in the past decade, you could tell that they're being run not as a football club, but as a commercial brand. You would have been able to see that. So I would say, well, what you knew what you were getting yourself in for there. And again, it comes back to my original points of, would he be saying these things if he was playing every single week? I'm not sure that he would. And as I've said from the beginning, his comments that were released last night don't change that. The intention, in my opinion, of this interview are not to make things better at Manchester United. His intention is not to, I love the fans, I believe in the fans, I love the club. The intention of this interview, in my opinion, is just to secure a move away from Manchester United. That's all it is. He does not want to have what happened to him last summer. He does not want to go through another transfer window where he wants to leave, and make no mistake, he wants to leave. He wanted to leave in the summer. He does not want to have a situation where he wants to leave and he can't, or for whatever reason, United block that. And they didn't necessarily totally block it in the summer. There were no interested parties, but he wants to ensure whatever it takes, he's gone in January. And he's doing everything he can. As I mentioned, he himself might even feel like his back's against the wall. Because in the summer, again, there were no takers. So I've got to go scorched earth. I've got to do something. So I'm going to do this interview. I'm going to slam the manager. I'm going to slam the club. I'm going to slam the ownership. I'm going to leave no stone unturned. I'm going to ensure that I'm gone. and I'm going to do that by criticizing everyone, whether they deserve it or not, whether they deserve it like the Glazers and the ownership, or whether they don't deserve it. In my opinion, Erik ten Hag, but some people disagree with that as well. Now, as I mentioned, it wasn't just the ownership that he criticised, but he did criticise. That was the key thing coming out of that. He did criticise, as I mentioned, the executive structure. He said that he felt doubted by the Manchester United bosses when he told them that his newborn daughter was sick in the summer, and he said that's why he missed pre-season. So his 3-month-old daughter was ill over the summer. She was in hospital, and he basically had told the club, according to Ronaldo, that, I don't want to be away from their side. I want to be with my family, and because of that, I'm not going to be available for pre-season, essentially. And he had said that, and this is where it does get somewhat complicated, because he said that he felt, or there was a feeling that the executives at Manchester United, or the bosses at Manchester United, didn't believe him. Now, he doesn't say, and again, this is when it will be really important, so I'm going to reserve judgment on this one, but this is where it is, he said it was more of a feeling. He doesn't, well, certainly the clip doesn't say whether or not there were any overt words said to him, i.e., I don't believe you, or you're making this up. He said it was more of a feeling. From a public perspective, Manchester United, as far as I can recall, and I know it's something that we here at the channel definitely try to do, is once they mentioned personal issues, it's always hands off, because family does always come first. This is always football, and I like to think that I certainly was, and I think all of us here at the channel was certainly respectful of that. Publicly, I can't recall, and again, it's different what does go on behind closed doors, and that is fair to point out, but I can't recall the club ever publicly doubting that. Again, it's difficult to say what happened privately. I'm sure Ronaldo will lift the lid on that when this full interview comes out. But from what I can recall in all of those press conferences, certainly with Erik ten Hag, he explained that it was family issues, personal issues, and he looked forward to having him back in the squad. He did also say, this is what, you can't miss a pre-season, but I would argue that was more in reference to him getting back up to speed and maybe initially not playing games because he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to play games. So that one, I think we will have to reserve a bit of judgment on until the full interview is released, because and all of this, you're going to have to, the full context is going to come out, of course. But certainly it'll be interesting to note if there was any overt "I don't believe you" from the club, or if it was just a feeling from Cristiano Ronaldo. Because let's face it, if the club did say to him, "You're making this up," then that's horrific. I can't imagine they did. But again, we'll have to wait and see when it comes to that. As I mentioned, he also spoke about some of his ex-teammates criticising him for the likes of Wayne Rooney and Gary Neville. He said, they are not my friends. It's easy to criticise. I don't know if they must criticise to be more famous. I think they take advantage of his name, referring to his name. People can have their own opinion, but they really don't know what's going on. For example, inside the training ground or even my life. It's easy to criticise if you don't know the whole story. He also spoke about Roy Keane and Rio Ferdinand, of course, two people that haven't criticised him. He said, as I mentioned many times, Roy Keane, for me, was my best captain ever. Rio Ferdinand helped me a lot. He was my neighbour. I was his neighbour. So very, very good guys. Not just because they speak good about me, but they were in the dressing room. They are football players. They know how players think and behave. Now, that bit, and to be honest, in this kind of bit, I don't really care for. I don't really particularly care too much about him coming out in the media and criticizing players. He's well within his right, and this is where I go back to just the subject of this interview. If this interview was just him pushing back against his critics or his haters, and he pushed back at Wayne Rooney and Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher and slagged them off and say, oh, Roy Keane and Rio Ferdinand are my friends, and even if he criticised the lack of investment at Manchester United, I'd have no issue with this interview whatsoever. But it's the attacks, as I mentioned, on the manager that I think are just across the line. And that is the frustrating thing as well about all of this, let's be honest, is that it's just, a lot of the things he said aren't necessarily wrong. Now, you could argue, again, you knew what you were getting yourself in for, and from the club's perspective, they're pushing back on, say the facility stuff, going, yeah, there wasn't investment in the facilities for the past decade, but now there is. When you raise that, we have changed it, and one of the prerequisites of Erik ten Hag coming in is that was this overhaul of a lot of the facilities at Manchester United and an overhaul of the chefs and the facilities and improvement in the training ground, etc., etc. So they are working on it. But, still, if it was just all of this, I wouldn't have an issue with the interview. But he just had to cross the line when it came to the ownership. I don't care about the ownership. The manager, sorry. So that's the frustrating thing. And already, to be honest, because it's been 2 days now, it's been 48 hours, I'm already kind of numb to it. The novelty of what is, when you do still take a step back, a wild situation is kind of gone, because he's still a United player. I mean, he's still under contract. He's still getting paid. At the end of this week, I mean, I don't know when he gets paid, if it's at the end of the month or whatever. At the end of this week, at the end of this month, whenever it may be, he will still get paid by Manchester United unless they determine that he has violated his contract so they can suspend him or whatever. I don't know. But he's still the highest paid player at the club. He's still an employee of the club, and he's doing this interview criticising the ownership. It is wild. It is. You do have to take a step back every so often and go, oh, this is really happening. So, again, when he says that, oh, no, I mean, Rio Ferdinand and Roy Keane, it's not because they speak nice about me. It kind of is, isn't it? It is because they speak nice about him. And again, that kind of stuff I really don't care for. I don't care all that much whether or not he's friends with his ex-players or anything like that. It's more, as I mentioned, the club aspect of things that I particularly care about. Now, it was reported by Chris Wheeler from the Daily Mail that Cristiano Ronaldo's agent George Mendes is looking for a new club, and it emerged that the pair met officials from Bayern Munich last week. So once again, these Bayern Munich links rear their head. However, this morning, Christian Falk, of course, German-based journalist, said, quote, "It's not true that there was a meeting between Bayern and George Mendes. FC Bayern is not interested in Ronaldo." And then this means that we start all this again, where these links now pick up to all of these clubs, and now these clubs, they'll come out, or journalists come out and go, no, there's nothing to it, we're not interested. And that's ultimately why Cristiano Ronaldo has done this interview. As I mentioned, he has done this interview because the longer he remains a United player, this kind of stuff will happen about, oh, these talks have happened. No, they haven't happened. We're not interested, because whilst he's still a United player, it's still too complicated to do. If he's a free agent, it's more than likely he can take his time to negotiate that deal, and a deal can get done. So I would still be surprised if he went to Bayern Munich, honestly, because they were so public in the summer. Oliver Kahn and directors at the club were saying it's not part of the project. We're not interested. Cristiano Ronaldo's a great player, but it's not in keeping with our project. I don't know. I mean, you could see him going to Germany in the sense of, he would still score goals there, I'm sure. But still, I don't know. Is he in keeping with a Nagelsmann philosophy? Probably not. But again, anything can happen if he's a free agent, which he's not at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see. And again, I'm sure those links will continue because, again, this is what the summer necessarily was. It was also reported by Chris Wheeler that Manchester United are exploring ways of sacking Cristiano Ronaldo over his interview. Lawyers for United are studying Ronaldo's claims that he feels betrayed by the club and has no respect for Erik ten Hag to see if this constitutes a breach of contract. I think this goes back to them waiting for the full interview to come out, because I think their thought process is if we wait for the full interview to come out, there might be one specific line or one specific phrase that does violate his contract, which will necessitate Manchester United to be able to sack Ronaldo, release him from his contract without giving a full payout. Again, and I think that's why they're waiting. So I think this is why they're obviously seeking legal advice before they officially act. And I think the legal advice would be, watch the full interview, see the full interview, see what he says. We'll go through it and we'll figure out what we can do. As of right now, they can't act too rashly because they could find themselves in some pretty hot water when it comes to things from a legal perspective, certainly as well. And finally, there was this all-good exchange between Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course, they're now all meeting up, and there are several United players in the Portugal camp, of course, for the World Cup. The likes of Bruno Fernandes, the likes of Diogo Dalot. And the clip is them in sort of a locker room, and Bruno seemingly is just arriving. Ronaldo puts out his hand for a handshake. Bruno does shake his hand, and and clearly says something, and Ronaldo kind of gives this sort of blank look and expression. And people were sort of going, oh, did he just snub Cristiano Ronaldo? What did he do? In all actuality, we don't know. You can't tell. There's no sound on it that we can hear. And some people are suggesting that nothing really happens. It was reported by Pedro Sepulveda, who is a Portuguese journalist, saying there is no problem between Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo in Manchester United or in the national team. Bruno and Ronaldo are focused on the World Cup. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. In all actuality, let's face it, for people like Bruno Fernandes and Diogo Dalot, I saw Dalot was in a picture with Ronaldo on the training pitch, I believe it was. It is awkward. You can't argue that. It certainly is awkward for them. What do? Do they keep their distance? I mean, it's not Manchester United. They're on international duty. They need pardon the pun, United squad to do stuff at the World Cup. So they've been put in an awkward situation as well. I don't even know if they talk about it with Ronaldo, because I guess from their perspective, like maybe now isn't the time to talk about it. But Bruno is almost the de facto captain of Manchester United. It's a huge disrespect to the club that he's the captain of. What does he do? But at the same time, it's Ronaldo. Again, it puts him in a really difficult situation. So I certainly sympathise with them with that. But look, this Ronaldo story is going to continue to rumble on. I don't know if we're going to get any more comments this evening. Possibly. They might drop once again at 10 p.m. The full interview, as I mentioned, part one of the full interview drops tomorrow. And then following that, it'll be Thursday. So we'll have coverage of that, certainly. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. I think they're going to be pretty much unanimously in favour of Ronaldo's comments over the Glazer ownership, which certainly I think we all are. But does this change your perspective on the interview? What are your thoughts on what he said about the incident with his family, possibly not believing him? His ex-teammates. Let us know your thoughts. Sound off in the comment section below. Be sure to smash the like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Plenty of content still coming. We've got some really fun stuff coming up over the next couple of days. So now's the time to subscribe. Of course, the World Cup does begin this weekend. There's a tournament on the horizon as well. So we've got plenty of stuff, really exciting stuff coming up in the future. Have a good Tuesday morning, and I'll speak for you again very soon. Peace.